Hi everyone, welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for schools that are renewing their Indiana Gold Star School Counseling status and or their ASCA ramp status. So the focus of this webinar is to update your program goals, and my name is Sue Reynolds and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So here's today's agenda. We'll do some quick updates and a review, and then we'll talk about preparing for this month's council meeting, which again is to update your program goals. We'll look at the submissions that will be coming up in September and then the rubric items for those submissions, and of course we'll go over the online system. Okay, so let's start with that review, and just real quickly, RSC beliefs, just as a reminder. We believe that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. We've known forever that school counseling programs do make a difference with student achievement, but this is why we think they make a difference, because when students are involved with really good school counseling programs, they make better choices in areas that impact success. So this is just another way of saying that. We call it our school counseling pyramid. And again, we're saying that when students are involved in sound guidance and counseling programs, they make better choices, and as a result of that, achievement goes up. And so as we're designing your school counseling program, we're going to take that pyramid and we're just going to work it backwards. You'll see today that we're going to start with achievement goals, and this is where you'll bring your achievement goals to your council. You'll get those achievement goals from your school improvement plan. And you'll say to your council, here's what we're trying to do in our school. We're trying to raise achievement in these areas. And then we'll work that backwards. We'll say, what are the student choices? What are the choices kids have to make, or the practices that they have to exhibit in order for us to be likely to reach our achievement goals? Those student choices are your program goals. So if one choice is that students have to choose to come to school, that would be a program goal. Students have to choose to not punch somebody when they're mad, that would be a program goal. So, so your program goals are all focused on these choices that we want kids to make. And then in later steps, we'll say, okay, what do we have to do as school counselors to help kids make those choices? And we'll drop in guidance activities and counseling activities to help kids be in a better position to make the choices that we want them to make. Okay, so this year we're going through the RSC process and we're updating work that you've done in the past. Next couple slides have green backgrounds because they are steps you have already completed. So you've already done the organizational structure parts, you updated your steering team, you collected new student data through the surveys, you updated your advisory council. So then last month we looked at updating your vision statement, and you're coming into September, into the next month that we're now preparing for, you're coming in with that vision statement updated. Just a reminder, if you're 1 month behind and you haven't done that vision statement yet, that's not a big problem. However, if you get 2 months behind, we find it's hard for schools to catch up if they're that far behind. So if you haven't done your vision, please very quickly do that so that in September you can get caught up and move on to the goal step. So, and that's what we're doing. We're prepping for now is we want to this month update your student choice goals. So again, we're going to be saying to your council, what are all the choices that kids have to make in order to be successful in our school in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 5th grade, 12th grade, what are the choices that students at each grade level need to make? Okay, then after this month coming up in September, once we know in October, once we know what all those choices are, then we're going to look at identifying priority goals, or the choices that you are really committing to help every student in your building make that choice in the coming year. Before we do that, we're going to expand your resources, because we know that the more time you have, the more energy you have, the more funding that you have. When you have more resources, you can tackle more priority goals. So before we get to priority goals, we're going to expand your resources, and then we'll determine how many of those goals that we're talking about today can become priority goals in October. Okay, after we know the priority goals, then in November we're going to start looking at another set of data that will help you determine what's getting in the way of kids making those program goals. Maybe it's that kids don't have good information. In that case, then there's a guidance issue that you need to address in your program. Maybe kids have personal social issues that are interfering with all of their ability to make good choices. And so then you've got a counseling issue that you need to address with your program. And maybe kids have good information and they don't have any personal social issues that are interfering with their ability to make choices, but we're just not giving them the opportunity to make the choices. So it may be that you want to adjust your program to give them students the opportunity to do things like take a career interest inventory or to go on a campus visit or to talk with their counselor about their future. So when we look at root causes, we're looking at all those things that could be getting in the way of kids making the choices that we're talking about today. So, and again, it may be that the kids don't have knowledge, there's social personal stuff going on in their lives, or we're just not giving them the opportunities. So later, we'll look at the root causes. Okay, then once we know what the root causes are, in December we'll update your activities. We'll say, okay, we had root causes 3 years ago, but we changed our activities, and now those root causes that we identified 3 years ago are no longer root causes. You know, kids are doing campus visits now. Kids are submitting their FAFSA or whatever you thought those root causes were 3 years ago. So you've got new root causes probably, and then we'll update your activities to reflect those new root causes. Okay, so that's the first semester when you're meeting with your advisory council. Then second semester we'll do the preparation work. This is post meetings with your council. So after we've met with your council, then second semester we'll update your lesson plans, we'll update your program calendar for the 17-18 school year and beyond. And then we'll also update your budget. So, okay, so that's the process in a nutshell, and let me jump in right here. Debbie, any questions I need to address here? Anything pop up?
Nope, I don't think nobody has typed anything in so far, so you're good.
Okay, not a surprise because we're doing review right now, so that's a good sign that everybody kind of gets it. But again, if anything's fuzzy, feel free to call us tomorrow and we're happy to kind of walk you through whatever. Okay, so this month we're looking at program goals. And again, those are the choices that we want students to make while they're enrolled in your school. So there's two things that are going to happen. The first thing is that we're going to give, prior to our meeting, we're going to give our council all of the survey data so they could look through it and say, oh my gosh, it's really important for kids in our school to make this choice, this choice, this choice, and this choice. They'll also have data so that they can see, you know, yeah, we want our kids to submit a FAFSA, but look at how few are. So that is another bit of data that they'll have as they look at your survey data. So, okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to send your council members a memo. I would send that memo out at least 2 weeks in front of your meeting, no sooner than a week, or no later than a week before your meeting. So in that memo you could send through the postal mail. You could also copy it and put it into an email to your council members. So lots of different, ways to do that. So the memo will do this. It's going to, actually, let's just look at the memo. That might be an easier way to do that. Let me pull that open here. Oops. Well, come on. Here we go. Okay, so the memo looks like this. And so you'll take this language, you'll edit it so it's like you want it to be, and then either drop it into an email, the body of an email, or put your school's letterhead at the top and send it as postal mail. So we're just kind of telling people we're pleased with the progress and thanking them. And then we're saying in the second paragraph that our next meeting we're going to be talking about goals. And then after reviewing our student achievement, we will discuss our school's counseling program goals. Our program goals will focus on the choices that we want all students to make in order to be better learners, responsible citizens, and productive members of a global economy. So then here's the tasks. In order to prepare for this meeting, please do the following. Please review the enclosed chart listing our school's academic goals. So this could be an email attachment, or it could be a second page in the letter that you're sending out. And you've taken the school improvement goals, the achievement goals, out of your school improvement plan, and you're giving that to people. So we've created a template for you that looks like this, that you could, get your school improvement plan, and then you could say, okay, our benchmark is to increase the percentage of students who are passing the Algebra 1 end of course assessment, okay, an achievement goal. And who is the student group that we're looking at for this? It's maybe 9th graders, or maybe by the end of 10th grade. What's our current data, and then what's our target data? So these are academic goals that you should be able to find in your school improvement plan. If you can't find them, then I would talk to your principal and say, what are our school's academic goals? I want to emphasize here the word academic. So we're not talking here, and this is really important, we're not talking here about things like improving attendance or improving disciplinary referrals. We're talking about purely about achievement. So math, science, social studies, English, language arts, world languages. What are the academic achievement goals that are in your school improvement plan? Now, the other thing that you might find is that some school improvement plans will say things like increase the percentage, or it'll say things like percentage of students passing the Algebra 1 end of course assessment, but it doesn't give you the student group. So in that case, you might want to again talk to your principal and say, is this a goal for our 9th graders or our 10th graders, or just the test takers, or who do we have this goal for? So if the student group is not identified in your school improvement plan, you'll want to address that with your principal or whoever is in charge of developing your school improvement plan. And then current data, hopefully that's in your school improvement plan, but it may not be. And again, that would be then a chance for you to talk to your principal to say, what is our current data and what's our target data a year from now? Where do we want that to move to? Now, some school improvement plans are not data-based, so they're not going to have, and this data has never been collected, what's our baseline data and what's our goal data or our target data. That's the case, if you don't have this information, just leave it blank, but at least get the benchmarks in here. What are we trying to do? And again, if you have a really sound school improvement plan, it should give you a benchmark, it should give you student group, current data, target data, and then also it should give you a timeline. In all of our work, the timeline is always 1 year from now, where do we want to be? But in your school improvement plan, it may be a 3-year goal or a 4-year goal or whatever. Okay, so you're teasing this information out of your school improvement plan. If you're using this template, then you'd want to write, this is from our 2016-2017 school improvement plan. Okay, so now let's go back to the memo. So we're telling people that that they can look at our academic goals, and now we want them to look at our program goals. So we're saying to folks, our school counseling program goals will focus on helping students make sound choices in areas that impact achievement. As you review the following reports, please check all the choices that you believe students should make in order for our school to reach our academic achievement goals. And then asterisk the choices that concern you because the data indicate too few students are making that choice. And then the third thing is to identify specific student groups who, according to the data, are making choices at a rate that is less than their peers. So that's the overall tasks, 3 things. And then here's how they do that. So part A is we're going to go to this public report, so they would just click on that or type it into their computer. And then when we get to this public page, this is the instructions. So I'll show you how to do this in a second. And then we're asking them to print the report, check the choices that they believe all students in your school should be making, and star the choices that are concerning to them because too few students are making that choice. Okay, so when they click on that link, they're going to go to a page that looks like this. This is the public survey results page. Notice that it doesn't look like the page that you go to when you go to survey reports through the online system. There's no menu over here like you see. Also, there's none of those yellow icons that are only available to people that have a password. So for the public, the only thing that they can see from your survey is the plans and choice data and the guidance needs data. So the instructions say to select the current year, so I have. Select your state, so Indiana, and then your school, so you come down and find your school. And then it asks them to click on the icon in the summary report for plans and choices. So they're going to click on this icon here. It takes this survey a while to open, so I've already opened it just so we can show you. This is what they're going to see, and what do you plan doing the first year after high school? They're going to see a percentage, and then they're also going to see the grade levels that answered that question, the number of students that participated in the survey for that question, and then how many gave each of the answers. So yeah, so as they're looking through this, they're seeing, should all of our students, let's look down, they're looking, should all of our students visit a college campus? Yes. So I would check this one. Am I concerned that only 45% of the 7th and 8th graders have? If that's concerning to me, then I would asterisk this one as well. Okay, so that's that. Then going back to the memo, then the memo is saying, go back to the reports. So we're going to go back to that public page. This time we're going to click on the drill down report for student groups that interest us. So, and then we're telling them they may select data for a specific grade level or a gender or a race or ethnic group or students that are free and reduced lunch. So we're telling them go back to that page. So let me go back there. And this time, instead of doing the summary report, I'm going to click on one of these other reports. This will take a minute to open, but this report gives, I just opened the gender one. So this report disaggregates the data, right? So I can see, okay, do you plan to go to college? That's something I want all students to do, but you can see in this school, there's a higher percentage, kind of a big higher percentage of females that have that plan than males. So again, as going back to that, oops, there we go. Going back to this page, if I'm interested in gender issues, this report might be interesting to me. If I'm a representative of the Hispanic community, this report might be of interest to me. If I'm an advocate for low-income students, this report might be interesting to me. So yeah, so they can open up specific reports, and they're looking for gaps. One other report on here that I think is really interesting to you is, as a school counselor, I would suggest that you take a look at this typical grades breakdown. It's really interesting to see the kinds of choices that kids make or that they don't make when they get D's and F's on the report card as opposed to A's and B's. So that's a really, really interesting report to look at. Well, I think you'll get a lot of knowledge from that. So, okay. So going back to the memo, so make a note of the student groups who are making sound choices at a lower rate than their peers. So from that school, if I found that males were making not as good of choices as females all throughout that, I might say, okay, our boys are not making good choices compared to the females. So, and then record data to back up your beliefs. And so I could go to say, just looking at the planning to go to college, this percentage of males said they were and this percentage of females. So I've got some data to back up what I'm saying. So, and then we're at the bottom of the memo, we're saying if they need extra help, please contact, and then you'd put in somebody local's information there. And then our next meeting, you'll tell them the date where you're going to be talking about this stuff. And then important, please bring the summary data reports that has your checks and asterisks on them to the meeting. So, okay, so that's the memo. So now, let's go back to our PowerPoint. Oops, let's see, slideshow, current slide. Okay, so that's the memo. Now, let's walk through the meeting. So the meeting has two parts. The first part is to just do your welcome introductions, to do a review. Remember, your council members, they don't work with us every day like you do, so this review every month when you meet with them is kind of important. And then you're helping them look at the school's achievement goals. There's a slide where you will be able to show those. This sometimes generates a lot of discussion, so you might want to, just be watching the clock at this point to make sure that that discussion doesn't just consume the whole meeting about your achievement goals. Often what we hear from counselors is that your economic development folks will jump in and they'll say, oh my gosh, those goals aren't lofty enough, or we need goals in this area. We need our employees to be able to do this. So it could be kind of generate a discussion there, and that may be something, watch your clock, but it also may be information that you want to share with your school improvement council that, you had this input from your school counseling council. So, okay, then break. Then the majority of the meeting we're going to spend looking at your school counseling program goals, looking at guidance gaps, and then just kind of looking ahead at what's coming next. It would be possible to break this into two meetings so that you could have two shorter meetings rather than one 2-hour meeting. Just kind of depends on what works best in your community with your folks. Okay. Okay, any questions about the memo? Debbie, any questions come in that I need to address?
No, everything seems good.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's look at the process page then and how this all works. Okay, so I'm going to go to the process page. So I've logged in. I'm going to go to the process page, and I'm going to scroll down to this month's activities, which are program goals. The webinar that we're recording right now will be linked here, and actually right here, watch the webcast. Then this is where you would get the two documents that we've been looking at. So the one on the right is the program goals template. I'm sorry, it's the achievement goals template, and the one on the left is the memo. Okay, then we're going to upload the student achievement goals. So whether you're using our template or you've got, it's very clear in your school improvement plan where they are, you could just upload your school improvement plan. We just need you to share with us somehow your school's achievement goals. You'll use this uploader button. You've used this in the past. This is where you just open this up and then you connect a file from your computer to it and then upload it. And then after that, whatever you upload will be available as a report here in the report column. Okay, so then you're going to conduct Advisory Council Meeting 2. This will take you to the manual page with the information on how to do that. Then you're going to enter your program goals. So let's go ahead and click that just as a reminder how they go in. So here's the steps. We're going to conduct the Advisory Council meeting. Then we're going to add suggested program goals. Okay, so let's look at that. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Before we do that, notice that all of the program goals that you put in the last time you did this are there. So, so this is not starting from scratch. We're just updating the list of things that we already have. Okay, so as I go through this step then, these steps, I'm going to add suggested program goals. I'm going to click enter. And when I get to this list, you'll see that there's a lot of warnings. And basically what these warnings are saying is that you already have this goal. And here's the group that you have it for. So plan to go to college, this goal is already in there for all students in all grade levels. So I could add another goal if I wanted to say, okay, yes, I have it for all students, but I also want to start closing achievement gaps, so I'm going to put it in as a specific goal for my Hispanic students. That would not override all students, all grades. It would add another one to another goal, a second one that was just for Hispanic students. So remember too that if you're doing Indiana Gold Star, we've got to address all of the universal student standards um, and um, and the new Indiana standards. So we want to make sure that all of these have been entered. So if there's any that don't have a warning on them, you might want to be thinking about, oh, how come I don't have that one in my plan, and am I hitting the Indiana standards some other way? So all of these goals are based on the Indiana student standards. Okay, I'm going to go back then. So I have updated my my program goals, the suggested program goals. Now this next step is I can create my own program goals. So if there's something that I want to put in, then I can review the goals. So there's a report that allows me to review all of my goals. And let me see here. I may already have that open. Yep. Nope. There it is. It just took me a minute. Takes it a minute for the system to gather all that data and put it into the report. Yeah, so here's all the goals for this school. And notice that the survey data is here. This will be updated for 2016. And then notice on some of the goals, actively participate in class. That's a choice that the school wants their students to make. There is no data here, and that's because this was a goal that they created, so it does not link to the survey. So there's only data in here when it's a goal that you've, from the suggested list of goals that, that you've selected. Okay, so that's that. And then I can edit the programs below. So here is also a list of all my goals. Notice that some of these you can't edit, and that's because this was a suggested goal, and we want to be able to compare the baseline data to the follow-up data, so we cannot change the wording of that item. So we don't give you the opportunity to edit. Let's say that you did want to edit it. Let's say you didn't want it to say almost always. You wanted the item to say always. What you would do is delete this item and then create your own that has the language the way you want it to be. So if it's a goal that you've created, you can edit it and make it anything that you want. So here's all the goals. Remember, not all of these will become priority goals, but these are just all the choices that students who are successful in school tend to make while they're in your building. Okay, so we've got that. And then we're entering your minutes. That works the same way it always has. And then here's the rubric items. And then when you're ready, send your email to Debbie and she'll review your program goals. So, okay, excuse me. So let's look at the presentation that you're going to actually do with your council. So,
Sue,
yes.
one question before you move on from the program goals.
Sure.
With the suggested goals, I have a question from Andrew Hassinger. If you select a specific goal, will it show up as a sub-goal under the bigger goal?
No, I see what you're. I think what you're asking, but type in again if this is not the case. If I'm, so let me go back in there. Entering program goals, and I'm going into the suggested program goals. I think what you're asking is if I decided that that plan to go to college, I wanted to create a second one like this that was, in addition to all student groups, it was just specifically for Hispanic. Would it show up as a subset of the plan to go to college? And the answer is no. It'll just appear as another goal. I do think they appear back to back. I can't promise you that, but I think they appear back to back, so it would be clear that, you know, that they're right together. So type in again if that didn't answer your question. Good question.
You said yes, that answers it. Thank you.
Good. That's an interesting idea too, and that's what, you know, when we get your questions, that's making me think, oh, that'd be kind of interesting. Maybe when we do the next update of RSC, that would be something that would be kind of interesting to drop in like that. So thanks for the question, and as always, we really appreciate your suggestions because, you know, as users, you know how you want to see this stuff. So very good. Okay, then let's go to the presentation. Okay, whoops. Okay, so in the beginning of your meeting with your council, you're going through the review again. I'm going to fly through this because we've already done it. Okay, so we're talking about, okay, here's what we're doing today now. And the first thing we're going to do is look at the program goals, and we're helping folks understand that there's two different kinds of goals. There's achievement goals, and one of the questions we'll be looking at today is what are our school's achievement goals? And then there's program goals. And our school counseling program goals, will look at what choices should all students make ideally in order for our school to reach our academic goals. So what I'm trying to do with this slide is to separate the ideas that there is achievement and then there's student choices. And they're two different things. We don't want to mix apples and oranges here. So we're going to look at achievement. That's in our school improvement plan. And then for our program goals, we're going to look at the choices kids need to make in order to drive that achievement up. So, okay. So this slide is just reminding people how in RSC we look at data. So the data is always going to have a student group, a benchmark, baseline data, and target data. So for example, and I tried to give examples that would, you know, focus on different things. All students report bullying when observed. Baseline data is 65%. Target data is 85%. So here's a personal social example. All students take a career interest inventory. There's a career example, 32 to 100. And I wanted to put at least 100% in as a target example to show that, you know, you could implement something that's going to reach every student in the building. You know, it might be very low right now, but if you do a career interest inventory and every student in the building takes it, you're going to go from 32 to 100%. All students talk to their parents about school, you know, all 8th graders. And so now we're looking at an example that targets in a specific student group. All 8th graders create a high school course plan. Right now, nobody's doing that. We're going to do something, you know, in next year so that all of the kids have that. And then here's a gap goal, looking at the boys who ask for extra help in class, and we want to take that from 72% to 70%. So yeah, so and then you can imagine the initiatives you're going to put in place in here. You know, part of it might be working with the boys individually when they come in to meet with you to look at their schedules or whatever, to talk about how important it is to ask questions in class. But it also, that might be an advocacy initiative where you're talking with the teachers about how boys from your data aren't asking for extra help as much as the girls, and engage the teachers in helping to address that as well. And then here's the timeline. In our work, we're always just looking at what can we do in the next year. So okay, so that kind of introduces the ideas. And then here's our school's achievement goals. And so this is just a slide, you know, where you can drop that in, or, you know, have to use this slide if you've got a print report, give them the copy of your school improvement plan or whatever. So this is just a template you could use if you wanted to. Okay, so now we're saying, okay, that's our achievement goals. Now let's turn the corner and look at our program goals. How can we support, as a school counseling program, how can we support those goals? So, and then we're going through, you know, don't forget, this is how it works, that when we, you know, we want to look at those academic goals, Now we're going to put in the student choices, or that will be our program goals, and then later we'll do the guidance and counseling part. So the key question today then is, what choices or what practices should all students make, because those choices will enable students to reach our academic goals, succeed at the next educational level, and ultimately succeed in post-secondary ed and succeed in the global economy. What choices, what practices should kids put in place? So then we were saying to the council, as pre-meeting work, you had the student choice report, and you've brought that with you. And let's just take a minute and let's look at all of the choices that you checked. Those are things that you said that you think those are choices that all of our kids should make. And one thing too, for your advisory council members, I think a lot of them will check off every single one of those things, because we didn't put anything on the list that we didn't think was a sound choice for every kid in the building. So, but maybe not, or maybe there are others that they'll want to add. So we're just giving them a few minutes, read down the list, just as a reminder of what you thought was important. You might have a few extra lists there, so if somebody forgot their list or they didn't do their pre-work, you can just hand them a list and say, okay, quickly skim through these and check the ones that you think are important. So, okay. Then we're going to ask people, would you please, if there's any additional choices that are not on this list that you think kids should make, just jot those down real quickly. So they're jotting those, they're adding those to the list. Okay, now we're just going to do an Instagraph, and what we're asking people to do, and this one's a little different, we're asking people to place sticky dots above any of the student choices or the goals that they do not feel are important for students in our school to make. So this time we're not voting, we're voting to leave things off the list, choices that are not important. So the Instagraph looks like, oops, come back here. Looks like this. And remember, there's when you open up the manual, there's one of these for each building level. So I opened up the middle school one. So this is the Instagraph. You would, before you blow this up into a poster, check the ones that are your current goals. So, my guess is a lot of these are already in your program, so you would check them all, or almost all. And then you're asking people if there's any of these that you don't think should be part of our program. It's not a goal for our students that they make these choices. Then just come up here and check. So you're giving people, some time to think, and then they come up and they put their checks in here, and the first person is going to put a check in there. The second person, if they want to vote for the same thing, would, and then the third person. So we're building this out here. So one question that we get, and it's a really good question, for the Indiana schools that have to address all of these choices as for the Gold Star Award, sometimes counselors will ask us, well, why do we even have to do this step if it's required for Gold Star? So we think it's really important that you not do this program just to meet some outside criteria. Let's say, for example, your council thought that it wasn't important for kids to plan to go to college. This gives them the chance to say, in our community, this is not important, we don't want to address this, and therefore we should not be striving for Indiana Gold Star because we differ in philosophy, in our beliefs about what we think is important for kids to choose to do. So this gives you a chance to see if Gold Star is a good match for you. If you have things here that your council wants to leave off the list, then that would beg some discussion and some thinking about whether or not Gold Star was appropriate for your school. And again, it's this whole thing with RSC is not about getting Gold Star. It's about designing the school counseling program that is right for your kids. So this will help you to tease that out. Now, can you go ahead with RSC without it being Gold Star? Absolutely. And just as a kind of a heads up, for the Ask a Ramp Award, all of this is not required. So for the Ask a Ramp Award, there are, schools that choose, probably all, if not most of these, but there are schools that do decide to leave some out. So yeah, so kind of think about that. But that's the reason why we do it. This gives you the chance to see, is Gold Star a good fit for you? Okay. One other caution here is that you can see, here's the middle school list, and there are 47 choices that kids need to make in middle school, we believe, in order to be successful students. But keep in mind that we're going to narrow this list down next month into priority goals. So there are 47 choices maybe that you want kids to make, but next month we're going to say, okay, but our program is going to focus big time on these 3 or this 1. So just because you have 47 choices does not mean that we're going to hit all 47 at once. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So that's that Instagraph. Okay, then we're going to look at guidance gaps. And the question is, are some groups of students making sound choices at a rate that is less than their peers? And what data led you to think so? So again, we're going to look at a second Instagraph. Let me show you that one. And on this Instagraph, we're looking at the different student groups, so gender, race, ethnicity, free and reduced lunch, special ed, general ed, some parental college, no parental college, parent has degree, no parent degree, typical report card grades, and then the different grade levels. So where do they see gaps? And again, you could just ask them, if you're seeing gaps, come up here and let's check off the student group that is of concern to you. And so maybe it's the Hispanic population, or the example that we looked at before, maybe it's boys. But we're kind of looking here to see, do we have gaps? We want to identify at least one gap. For most schools in Indiana that are rural, the gap tends to be free and reduced lunch. For the more urban schools, it may be in a race or ethnic group, or it might also be free and reduced lunch. It kind of just depends on what speaks to you. May also be different grade levels that you're seeing that, for some reason your 9th graders are choosing to enroll in the Core 40 diploma, but in 11th grade they're not choosing so much. So now we've got a gap between these grade levels. So, okay, so in this step we're looking at what are the gaps, and then later that will tie into your programming. Okay, and then we're just, looking ahead. We're going to say, thanks for your help. Before we see you again, we're going to create a list of program goals based on your input. And then after that, we'll expand resources and then narrow down that list into priority goals. And then finally, we'll start looking at why aren't students making those choices. And then we'll look at activities that we can implement both at school and in the community to help kids make those choices. Okay, so that's the walk through the meeting. Debbie, as I'm flipping back to the other PowerPoint, any questions here?
We have a question from Andrew that says, I assume 1 sheet per gap is being addressed. That is being addressed.
I'm assuming, say again?
1 sheet per gap being addressed. So the sheet that you just had that asks, are you addressing a gap per male and female? At the top you would have the goal that's being addressed, or the...
Let me look at that again. You could do it that way, and actually we've kind of gone back and forth. So if let's say you have those 47 goals. If you did one of these sheets per choice, you'd need 47 of these choices, and that would make the conversation really long. And actually, in another one of our initiatives, we do it that way. It's of course, you get a lot better data that way because it's so pinpointed. You know, we're looking at, for college, choosing to go to college, do we have gaps? For this question, do we have gaps? What we chose to do here, and strictly to help with the time of your meeting, was to just look for trends in all those goals. So as people are looking at, let me go back to that list. As people are looking at, let me see if I still have that one open. No, I don't. Well, as people are looking down that list of male, female, you know, when I found that first one, oh, the girls are making better choices than the boys here, I would just kind of keep skimming down to all those questions to see if that was a trend. So, so really here what we're looking for on this one is kind of trend data in all of the student choices. What trends are you seeing? So there would just be one of these sheets that you would look at in general. It's trend data. That said, if I were in your shoes, on the next step, when we identify the priority goals, so now I'm just looking at like 3 of them, in that case, I would definitely want to drill down specifically on that priority goal to see what gaps am I finding for that priority goal. And we'll do that in next month in that step as well. But right now, when we're looking at 47, or for some schools, you know, there's 50 or 60 of these choices, we're just going to look for trends and specifically to save time. So can you type in and let me know if that answered your question?
Yes, thank you, Sue.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so thanks. I really appreciate the questions. Okay, so let's go back and just wrap this up. Okay, so this month's submissions, the one submission you're going to be uploading is your achievement goals. And again, you can upload your school improvement plan or tease out just the achievement goals. That would save Debbie some time because then she wouldn't have to search through the whole plan to find them. But upload the achievement goals. And then on the program goals, let's go through these. So we want to make sure that program goals are present. The program goals reflect desired student choices in areas that impact achievement. And again, if it's been several years, more than 3 years since you did this process, this is a little different. So we're just looking at student choices. Later, we're going to look at the guidance and counseling data as your root cause data. So your goals are all focused on student choices. Then at least one of the program goals targets a specific student group. So at least one goal is going to say we want to increase the percentage of students planning to go to college for boys or for Hispanic students or, you know, whoever. So we're looking at where do you have gaps, and at least one of these program goals we're going to identify that as a gap area. And then in Indiana only, the other thing is that all of the suggested program goals have been included to address each of the Indiana Universal Student Standards for Guidance. And the best way to do this is just to make sure that when you're entering the suggested program goals, you just include them all. Okay, and again, if we need to talk with you about that, you know, just give Debbie a call and we'd be happy to chat about that. If you're listening to this and you're not in an Indiana school, this is not a requirement for Ask a Ramp. It's only a requirement for Indiana. In Ask a Ramp, you would only include the student choices that that speak to you and your community feels are important for your students. Of course, it's probably going to be all the suggested program goals because, you know, our experience has been they're on the list because we think they're important for all kids. But you don't have that requirement outside of Indiana. So, okay. Then the advisory council minutes, those rubric items are the same as always. So let me see. Debbie, any other questions before we kind of close her down here? If you have a question you want to get in, this would be the time to type it because we're going to close in just a few minutes.
I see no more questions, and just a reminder to register for the second semester meetings. They should have gotten an email.
Okay, so here's the calendar for the meetings that are coming up. So you can see our next meeting is October 4th, where we will be prepping for the October activities, which is the priority goals. So that's coming up then, and as Debbie mentioned, we are, during the webinar, you should have gotten an email with links to register for all of the upcoming webinars. So please, if you haven't registered, please do that. So, okay. And don't forget that Debbie is here, eager to answer your questions, so please feel free to give her a call. And we've heard lots of positive things from schools about Debbie's availability and how nice it has been to have somebody there at the phone who's ready to answer your questions when you have them. So please, please, please call Debbie. Also remember that one of Debbie's jobs is active monitoring of your work. So if you start to get behind, we'll send you friendly reminders. We found that especially with school counselors, there's so much on your plate that it's easy to get behind in the things that you do, because there just is so much on your plates. So we want to make sure that you don't get more than 2 months behind, so we'll get pretty aggressive with reminding you to get going if you start to fall a lot behind. So that's part of Debbie's job. We call it friendly nagging. So, but the good news is that at the end of the year you have a wonderful plan because you've kept up and had time to do things, and when you weren't, totally rushed to get everything done at once. Debbie, anything you want to add before we close?
No, just please don't get overwhelmed. Call me if you have a concern, but also don't get underwhelmed, because then I don't want you to fall behind.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks everybody, and we look forward to talking with you next time. So good luck as you put together your program goals. Thanks.